Hello and welcome to the NIFSA Open Doors Film Panel Series. I'm Professor Jeffrey Wisotsky and we're coming to you live from the studios of Bronx Community College. This is a program for film students around New York State and produced entirely by students in the BCC Media and Digital Film Club. 2016 has been New York's busiest year on record with regards to film and television production. Thanks to Governor Cuomo's tax credit program, over 60 television shows have shot in the state this year, including the critically acclaimed series Power, which airs on the Starz network. Courtney A. Kemp is the series' creator and showrunner. Under her leadership, the show doubled viewership from its premiere episode to its season 1 finale and attracted the largest African-American audience of any scripted premium series in almost a decade. Now, filming its 4th season, Power has become the most watched Starz original series ever. Prior to Miss Kemp's success with Power, she was a writer and supervising producer on the Emmy-nominated CBS series The Good Wife, and also worked on ABC's Eli Stone and Fox's The Bernie Mac Show. Ebony Magazine named her as one of their Power 100 honorees in 2015, and Marie Claire Magazine lists her as one of the 50 most influential women in America. We are incredibly honored to have her with us today in the studio. Welcome, Courtney.
Glad to be here. When you say all that stuff, it sounds really impressive.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm a writer in sweatpants most of the time.
That's cool. Well, I'm one of your biggest fans. I watched all 3 seasons with my son, Jake. And our students in the audience and everyone watching the program online, they want to know your path to power. They want to know the story on how you got started. What was the entry point for you, and what were some of your first jobs?
Well, I actually started out as an English major in college and really wanted to write for a living. I'd always written short stories. I'd always been creative. But I didn't know how I was going to make a living writing. I think it still confounds people to this day. So I started out English major, then I went to graduate school for English literature, and I got my master's, and I really didn't like all the isolation that graduate school required. I wanted to be around people. So I left graduate school and went to become a journalist. And while I was a journalist, I wrote an article about interracial dating that 2 television writers, 2 comedy writers, Mike Chesler and Chris Alberghini, who now run a show called Awkward on MTV. But at the time, those 2 guys wanted to make my article into a TV show. What? I'd never heard of this. I was literally on my boss's desk going, Marty Beiser's office. I was working in GQ as an assistant at the time. And I ended up creating a show with these guys. It didn't go anywhere. Never happened. But I got the bug. Then I was like, oh, this is what I meant to do. It required me to move across the country. It required me to uproot my life. It required me to commit fully to being a television writer and leave everything that I knew behind. But if this is what you want, that's what you have to do.
I want to bring up Bernie Mac. You were a staff writer on the Bernie Mac Show. Did you write a spec script for the show? And do you recommend that our film students that want to become writers write spec scripts for TV series that they enjoy watching?
Absolutely, 100%. I did write a spec Bernie Mac, and I got hired. The business has changed a lot, and the focus on spec scripts has become less. People are always now, write a pilot, write a pilot, write a pilot. I do not read pilots of people under a certain level. If you're coming to apply to be a staff writer on my show, I don't read your pilot. I don't care. I'll tell you why I don't read your pilot. I don't read your pilot for 2 reasons. Number one, the job I'm hiring you for is to write episodes of Power. So I actually need to know if you can imitate a voice of a show that exists. Not Power. I don't read Power specs for another reason. But if you write a spec Good Wife, for example, and I read your spec Good Wife and I see the show in there, that means I want to hire you to write Power because it means you have that skill set, the skill set to write someone else's voice. Writing a pilot only shows me that you can write your voice. Well, great, but that's not the job I'm hiring you for. So to me, I feel very strongly about that, and that's not true of everybody. You'll have different showrunners in here, and they will tell you something different, that they want to hear the person's original voice. I'll get to know you when you come in. When you come in to meet me, I'll get to know you. I'll get to know your voice. But until I read that you can write someone else's voice, I'm not interested. Not to work on Power. That's not what that's for.
What are a few of your favorite TV shows, Courtney, that you enjoyed watching growing up? And what are some of the shows you watch now? When we came down here, we looked at the old RCA camera in the hallway pointing us to the studio, and I told you it was from the Ed Sullivan Show. And you said something very interesting, and I hope that you'll share with our audience.
Oh, sure. Well, what I was saying was not about my favorite shows. That wasn't but what I was saying was that the Ed Sullivan, when the Supremes were on Ed Sullivan, pretty much every black person in America ran to their TV set because they didn't know, they hadn't had the experience of seeing people of color on television. And I was saying that the phenomenon around Power or around Empire, or around some of the shows that are on now, it's still that same phenomenon so many years later. That drives, people want to see themselves on TV. That still is happening and still very important. When my friend, I have a good friend named Cheo Hodari Coker, he's the showrunner of Luke Cage. When Luke Cage went live on Netflix, it shut Netflix down for 2 hours. They couldn't restart the platform. And people are going, well, how is this happening? It's happening because we're not on TV enough, and people are dying to see themselves. One of the things that happened with our show is that we put Spanish on our show that was specific: Puerto Rican, Dominican, Cuban. We wanted people to sound like what they actually are, and not this monolithic idea of, well, this is a Spanish speaker, or this is what a generic Latino is. There's no such thing as a generic Latino. It makes me super angry. So it was something that I wanted to write away from. Well, people responded to that because they saw themselves on TV. That's all I was talking about with that. That's not the answer to your question,
No,
but
it's
if you want to know what my TV shows, I can tell you that.
It's a good answer.
Yeah.
I mean, I always like to ask someone what are some of your favorite motion pictures and TV shows. I understand that Power grew out of a coffee house meeting in Los Angeles between the executive producer Mark Canton and 50 Cent. Could you talk a little about the original concept for the show?
Well, it's two separate ideas. 50 and Mark already had a relationship, and they wanted to write a show that was music driven. They really were interested in television because television was becoming more popular, not more popular, but more influential than film. To some extent, films right now are in this weird moment where you either make a huge film or you make a tiny film. All those mid-range films have gone away, and all the people who make those things are in television. Television is the writer's medium. Film is the director's medium. So as a writer, you want to be in TV because this is where you're the boss. In film, the director's the boss. So it's just a different thing. Mark and 50 only had experience in film, but they really wanted to make a television show. I was working on something that was like a blaxploitation thing at the time. So the CAA, it's not a magical story where it's like, oh, I saw them at Schwab's. It's actually CAA, which was my agency still, and 50s at the time, put us all in a room together. I already had a concept for the show and what I wanted the show to be, and then we married it together.
So you and the cast have been live tweeting the show since season 1, making yourselves uniquely available to the people who love the show. Nielsen statistics say you average over 46,000 tweets an episode.
Correct.
I mean, can you talk about how social media or the tweets provide the power behind your show?
Well, 100%, because I can actually point to, unlike many showrunners, I can actually point to my network and say, look how many people are interested in this show. You can see it live. You know, you can't tell me that it's not impactful. There's another show on our network, Outlander, that's gotten a lot of critical acclaim. And I think people are always like, you know, oh, Outlander, stars Outlander. But we have done amazing things for the network, and you can see it every, you know, now Sunday, but Saturday nights even, live as people were tweeting it and being passionate about the show.
Our students tweet it. You know, this is great.
I probably have responded to some of you.
Yeah,
I do love the interaction, but I have started to like minimize a little bit what I do.
So when I got out of Columbia University Film School, there were two screens, the movie screen and the television screen. Now there's streaming video, watching films on your computer, tablets, phones. Screens are everywhere, even at behind cab drivers' windows, right? Bus stop, the elevator. As the showrunner, how does this affect the stories you tell and how you tell them?
Oh, well, it affected in that Power is specifically extremely high octane. We fill a lot of time in the episode with a lot of impactful juice. We call them oh shizzle moments in the writer's room. Like, we need to have a certain amount of moments where you want the person, the idea is to get the person to pause the television. That's the idea. The idea is to get them to pause and say, girl, did you see that? Or make them rewind. That's the point. And the point of doing that is that you have to watch my show. I know you're tweeting, I know you're texting, I know you're posting something on Instagram while you're watching my show, but you just missed something. Now you have to stop and you have to go and look at it. Because I'm going to force you to do that because you're going to miss so much if you turn away from the screen for a minute. You know, that's how I have adapted. It's my bosses sometimes say, well, that's too much to put in one episode, and I say, they'll rewind. I mean, I really mean that. If you miss something, you'll rewind. But I know I have to fight Facebook. I know I have to fight Twitter. I know I have to fight whatever else might be on your screen. I have to fight your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your mom, your cousin, your aunties, everybody who's blowing up your phone. I have to fight all those people to get you to pay attention. So it better be good. It better be fast. It better be high octane, you know?
I want to talk about the music in Power. I read that 50 Cent used Curtis Mayfield's Superfly as an inspiration. He said, quote, that film was probably the best soundtrack that was ever made, Superfly, unquote. There were points when the character didn't have to say anything. The music would play and tell you what he's thinking, unquote. Can you talk about how important the music is to the success of Power?
Well, it's really a huge part of my job. And I do a lot of work to source new songs that people haven't heard. Sometimes we have to use stuff that people have heard. But the biggest challenge with our show is that it's hip hop driven and we do it a year in advance. So, you know, hip hop changes like this. So last year we had a scene and it was like perfect for this Fetty Wap song. And we were all like, well, will Fetty Wap be hot in a year? You know what I mean? Will anybody care about that, or will it be dated? We are on such a faster sort of music cycle than other shows because we don't make the music ourselves for the show. It's not original composition for the most part, so it's not like Empire where they're making original compositions. We are using real music and paying real money for that real music, and that means that it could be hot or not by the time the show airs.
I went to a special screening of the Power pilot at the School of Visual Arts last year. One of your executive producers, Randall Emmett, is also an SVA graduate, and he discussed his involvement in the show. When we see several producers listed in the opening credits, students ask me, what does the producer bring to the production? All these different producers. Can you share with us what you expect from your producers that working on the show?
Unfortunately, with the way that, I mean, the real answer is the title executive producer can mean nothing or everything. It can mean literally you getting a check and you don't show up and you don't have anything to do with it because you were in partnership with someone or you happen to be in the right place at the right time. It can also mean you do everything. I do everything. I write, I produce, I do everything except direct on the show. 50 is heavily involved in the show. I mean, heavily. He talks to the cast. He hangs out on set when he's not shooting. He's a hands-on producer. I think a lot of people think that because he's 50 Cent, he's not involved. He's super involved.
Sounds like David O'Selznick.
He's very, very, very involved. I have other people who are not so involved. I have one producer, Gary Lennon, who is my second in command on the show. Gary does everything when I'm not there. So he runs the writer's room when I'm not there. He's on set right now. So it can completely depend. But what I will tell you that you don't know is that a lot of those producer titles that you see in the beginning credits of something, those are writers. So when you see co-producer, producer, supervising producer, co-executive producer, a lot of those people, not all, but a lot of those people are writers. And what happens is writers have a certain, like anything else, they have tiers, you know what I mean? Like freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, same idea. You got staff writer, story editor, executive story editor, co-producer, producer, supervising producer, co-executive producer, executive producer. And so as you move through the ranks, you get different titles, and those titles have the word producer on the end of them. So sometimes those are the people that you're seeing.
Many TV shows mostly stick with the same set of writers, the same crew, and obviously the same cast throughout the seasons. However, it goes through several different directors, and many of them do only one episode, maybe two. Is this a common practice on Power also?
Well, we've been fortunate to keep our writing staff mostly together. A lot of shows fire the writers every year. I mean, every show is different. Every show is a different ecosystem. As for episodic directors, that's how that works. On a television show, your writer, your showrunner, your producers, they are permanent, and the directors come in and out per episode. That's how that works. You might have something called a producing director. We don't have one. Starz doesn't do that. Premium cable, that's more rare, but in broadcast, there's usually a producing director who's there a lot, and that person will direct a lot of episodes.
Wow, okay. Well, director John David Coles, he was here. He spoke to our students last year, and he directed the Power episode, Who Who Are You when Kanan is introduced in jail.
Yes.
Or the scene you shot with Angela and Ghost when they meet under the whale in New York's Museum of Natural History. How important is it to shoot on location? And do you shut these places down for the show?
Yes. Actually, the Under the Whale, that wasn't John, that was Anthony Hemingway, who directed the first 2 episodes of the show, episode 101, the pilot, and 102. But I'll tell you the story about the whale, which is a good story, and it does have to do actually with this office and the City of New York office as well, which is that I was desperate to shoot under that whale. I was shooting under that whale, because if you grew up in New York or in the tri-state area, you went on that field trip. That was so important to me that you really, really have a sense that these 2 kids grew up together in New York, right? That this is a real place. And people who don't live in New York don't know that, but the Museum of Natural History is a big part of our childhood memories, right? So I wanted to shoot in the museum. I wrote the scene. Damon Gordon, who's our location manager, told me this was going to be very, very difficult. I said, I don't care. Everyone, because I was young, I was 36 when I started this. I was a kid in TV years, not to you all, but at 36 is really young. And I was like, I don't want. They said, no, we can't get it. Can we go to Queens? Can we go to the World's Fair? Can we go to Coney Island? And I said, no, I want to be under that whale. And they at one point there was that like pat on the head moment, like, I know you do, sweetie, but we're not going to be able to do it. And I was like, we're doing it. And at the last minute, we actually got it. We wrote letters, we did all these things, we begged, everything, and Damon finally got the approval. But we had to shoot from 3 in the morning until 9 a.m., at which point we had to load out, because it's load in and load out. So we load in at 2, shoot from 3 until 9, load out, because the museum opens at 10. So yeah, we did have to shut it down, but they were shut. It was 3 in the morning, but that's how we had to pull that off.
And the same thing in the jail with Kanan?
No,
with John
that's actually a working jail, and the part of the jail that was not in use was where we shot. So there were prisoners in there and everything. They were in the other part of the building, and that wasn't a shutdown at all.
Wow. You know what? There's a shot in there of Kanan's sneakers. Product placement question. Did you get paid by the sponsor to use their sneakers?
Premium Cable does not do product placement.
No product placement.
There's no. Okay. It doesn't work like that. It's a whole weird other series of questions that I've never understood, because I come out of broadcast where it's just straight up product placement. Right. You use a Buick pays you. It doesn't work that way in Premium Cable, because people at home are paying to have the channel. So there's some laws there. Right.
When Ron Howard's feature film, A Beautiful Mind, was shot on our campus, the location manager told one of my colleagues that the director liked the Gould Memorial Rotunda for a location because of the curved architecture throughout the building. The curved walls became a metaphor for the character's paranoia. Do you feel that locations sometimes become part of the characters in Power?
I think the best answer to that is that New York City is a character in the show. We have the best location in the world. I mean, at one point we were in the beginning process of putting the show on its feet. Starz said it's too expensive to shoot in New York. We can't do it. Can you do it in Toronto? And I said no. I said no, I can't do it in Toronto. I'll tell you why. The extras are going to be wrong. All the background's going to be wrong, because New Yorkers are not anywhere else in the world. New York looks like New York, and specifically, I will tell you, Latinos. You cannot have the same diasporic sort of group of people if you shoot somewhere else. And I also wanted people to be Asian, and I also wanted people to be black. I also wanted people to be black and not West Indian, as well as being West Indian. I wanted New York. And so it was really important to me to be here. It costs us so much more money to be here, but it is worth it, absolutely. So
I agree.
That's the location that informs all the characters, right?
I agree. My brother, when you went on there, my brother called me and said, you got to watch this show. It's New York. So the pilot episode of Power was directed by Anthony Hemingway. Hemingway also directed the movie Red Tails about the famous World War II Tuskegee Airmen. Mm-hmm. Our former president, who recently passed away, Roscoe Brown Jr., was one of those Tuskegee Airmen. So like actors, do directors have to audition for a chance to direct an episode of Power? Did several directors pitch you why they should direct the pilot? I know we spoke about this briefly. I think our students would like to hear how they have to have a passion for that show too.
Yes. I mean, again, in TV, I don't recommend you be a director. That's just what I would say. If what you really want to do is work in television, I would say work on your writing. be the boss, don't be the visitor. But if you want to direct a pilot for something, first of all, you have to have a very long history of directing regular episodic television. Then these guys, the script went out to all the agencies, and we started looking at directors. Anthony got the job because he had worked at HBO for a long time, and my bosses were at HBO prior to being at Starz. So they respected his work, they knew what his work was. But he also had a super passion for the project and had a youth. You know, Anthony is young, and he was specifically, he's from here, he's from New York. So that also for me, I prefer people from New York. That's my preference. But I also just overall creatively think that this show, the pilot, needed to be directed by someone who knew the city. If I have to explain to you where the Major Deegan is, we already have a problem, right? I already have to interpret. So it was partially that. But yes, a bunch of people came in, auditioned, thought that they, not auditioned, but they had concepts for the show.
Yeah. I think he did a great job. I love the first. I know the scene where someone is getting murdered in the basement of Truth, and he goes back upstairs with his suit on, like there's two worlds going on. I said, that is just, the parallel action was just wonderful. That was it. You hooked me that first show.
Oh, well, that's great. Yeah. That's great. Just to say that, though, that's writing, that's not directing.
Absolutely.
And again, that's the separation between film and television. In film, you would give that credit to the director, but in TV, that was on the page already.
Absolutely. Yeah. So John Glenn, first U.S. astronaut to orbit the Earth, died yesterday.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry to hear that.
You want to know where I'm going with this, right?
Super do.
He returned to space at the age of 77 in 1998. He holds the record for the oldest person in space. He said in an interview that I heard last night that they were broadcasting on radio, he said, quote, "Even old people still have dreams and aspirations," unquote. What's the average age of your writers in the Power writers' room?
Oh. I had no idea where you were going with that at all. Well, it's not, the average age, I guess, is probably, average is probably about 37, but that's because we're so wide. We have a couple people in their 50s. I'm going to be 40 next year. We have many people are in their mid to late 30s. We have a couple people who are early 30s. And then my support staff, who I have in the writer's room, who I encourage to be in the writer's room, they go from like 26.
That's the question that came up in class. You know, can a film school student leaving film school get a job in the writer's room?
Well, in the writer's room, it's writer's assistant is the job that's in the writer's room where you're actually typing. Okay. On my show, and it's specific to our show, this is not how everybody does it, I like everyone to be in the writer's room as much as possible. I want the kids to hear what's going on. I want everyone to be involved as much as possible. I want pitching. I want all those ideas. Some places are way more hierarchical than the way that I run Power. I like to run Power as like best idea wins, not highest title wins. There's some things that we've done on the show that I didn't want to do. I heard the idea and I was like, meh, I don't want to do that. And then I got argued out of it, you know? And you have to keep an open mind, you know? And sometimes people have a different background. I didn't grow up really in a city with drug activity going on around me. Some of the people in my writer's room did. And because they did have that experience, I'll listen to them.
The novelist Richard Price, in his iconic Bronx novel, The Wanderers, introduces us to other gangs in the Bronx, the Fordham Baldies, the Ducky Boys, and the Wongs. How do you come up with the names of the gangs that Ghost and Tommy are always talking about?
Research.
It's research.
Research.
Okay.
So, for example, anyone who's here who's Dominican or Puerto Rican knows what a Taino is. So we did the research to figure out, okay, so what would a Dominican gang be? Because I'm obviously not going to call them DDP. Like, I'm not trying to get shot. So we did research. We tried to figure out and we also had to do research about what colors we could use that weren't actually real colors of real gangs. So it's a lot of work. It's actually a ton of work. And then figuring out where in the city Eastern European gangs are running. Where in the city, because those of us who are of color, we're very visible. Latinos and blacks are very visible, but there are Asian gangs running around and white gangs that are Eastern European. The Westies are gone, you know? The mob has receded, but there's still people who are what we would consider Caucasian who are running organized crime in New York City. And so it's a question of really unearthing that and doing that research.
Joseph Sikora, who plays Tommy in the series, recently said in an interview, quote, "It's really a 50-50 collaboration at the end of the day. There's no such thing as Tommy without Joseph Sikora." Do you find that the case with most of the actors that you cast for the series?
I mean, it's not even specific to the actors. It's specific to the process. If you're doing it right, you draw the lines and then the actor brings the color. You know, Tommy was definitely, I mean, we wrote Tommy, first of all, he was Eddie at first, we changed the name. But we wrote Tommy, and then Joe showed up, and then he was Tommy. It was, you know, it's a different, like he took the character and made it his own. He made it richer. But over time, you start to listen to the actor, and then you start to write for the actor. And he's absolutely right. There's no such thing as Tommy without Joseph, because Joseph brings what he brings, that voice, those mannerisms. It was Joseph who wanted to eat all the time, and then I was like, all right, I'm doubling down. Now you're going to eat all the time, son. You know what I mean? It's just whatever it is.
And he's always at Tasha's eating, man. This
He's
guy
he's everywhere eating. He's everywhere
You think why he doesn't gain any weight, you know?
He works out a lot.
You said in a recent interview, quote, "We the writers make the outline and the actors color it in."
Yeah, I say that all the time,
You say-
obviously.
It's a great line. So in an article in the Washington Post, I did a little research too, you said, quote, "I really do love male characters, in some ways for the fact that they get surprised when they're vulnerable," unquote. As much as Power has a male main character, you have a deft touch with both Angela and Tasha, who are drawn to very different parts of Ghost and to interaction between the show's other female characters. Can you talk about that a little more?
About the difference between writing male and female characters?
Well, Tasha and Ghost's character, Tommy and Holly's character, it keeps you in your seat every week. You know, I mean,
I don't actually know what you're asking, but I can talk about what that's about. For me, I think basically I like to write about damage. So I think that what happens when people fall in love is that they're damaged, like it's like puzzle pieces. The two different kinds of damage come together. So in the example for, you know, Ghost and Tasha, we see in Tasha's relationship with her mother and in her history that she had a father who was abandoning, right? He disappeared, and that relationship didn't work out. So Tasha gravitates towards someone who is stable. Ghost is stable when we first meet him. He becomes less stable, but he's stable, so she's attracted to that stability. What Ghost is attracted to is someone who is a partner, right? When it's just the drug business, that's what he wants. He wants that partner. The partner's like, why don't you chop him up, right? He also wants a partner in Angela. He wants someone who's a partner. If you think about season 2, he actually says to her, no, season 3, he actually says to her, well, we'll have a global business and you'll come work for me. You'll be a lawyer in my business. He always wants a partner. He always wants a helpmate. He always wants, you know, Eve to his Adam. So that's his damage. Why is that? Well, because his mom split when he was a kid. With Tommy and Holly, I'm always writing about their damage and how those different kinds of damages speak to each other. And that's what I think love is. I mean, maybe that's a cynical view, but I think we fall in love with that which makes us feel safe, even if the thing that makes us feel safe is abuse, because we grew up in an abusive household. Even if that's the thing that makes us safe, that's what we do.
For decades, American audiences have seen virtually every facet of white sexuality play out on a big and small screen. Power is a show with a predominantly Black and Latino cast that isn't interested in downplaying the sexuality of those characters. Power embraces its sexiness. Courtney, can you talk about that a little more?
Sure, absolutely. I think, you know, one of the things that happened to me very early in this process was I had an executive say to me, well, the problem with you writers from broadcast is that you always pull your punches. And I was like, oh, really? Okay. And so we really wrote it to push the envelope. And then I also thought that it was really fun to get an opportunity to tell a story about sex, about sexuality, where the sex is actually part of the story. See, in broadcast, you have two people kiss, and then you go to commercial, and then you come back, and they're laying under the sheet. It's usually the L-shaped sheet, so the sheet's up here on the woman, and it's like down here on the man, right? You can cut around the sex, because the sex doesn't mean anything. On our show, sex always tells a story. It's always about the two people in that experience and why they're having sex, why the sexuality, and that's what's really important. So the race of the characters is not important as much as the storytelling within it. I don't think your life turns off when you're having sex and then turns back on. You know, it doesn't stop. You're not unconscious. So there are things that are going on in your head and in your mind and in your body that are part of the story of living as a human being, which is what you're trying to get at with characters that are rich.
So looking back at the Sex and the City and Entourage films that were released after the series were over, when do you think we'll see a feature film about power? And will the story begin with Kanan, when Kanan was on the street, when Ghost was working for him? When is it going to happen?
50 very much wants to do that. 50's very, very, very intent on us doing a feature film. I don't understand the need to do feature films of TV shows. I really don't get it. I don't know why. I've never really understood that. I don't know what the experience, what the different experience gives you. And so, you know, he and I have talked about it mostly because he feels like people would be curious to see what it was like, what that experience was. But I always say to him, we can't have Omari and Joseph play 15-year-olds. That's not going to work. So we're casting new people entirely. If we're going back in time and we're doing a prequel, now we've got an entirely new cast.
Like Godfather 2.
Like, is that interesting? Like, is that what people want to see? I don't think so. I think what people want, and what I never do, which much to the audience's chagrin, they want a flashback sequence with the same actors playing those parts, but that's not what they would look like. And I have a really hard time understanding how that's satisfying. You know, you want to provide a certain amount of satisfaction to your audience. That's what you want to do. But flashbacks give that in a way that's super artificial. If you are being fair and playing fair live with your audience, the two characters should be able to tell you or show you their history in their present day dialogue. That should happen now, as opposed to happening in some sort of flashback. So, will there be a feature film? Maybe. 50 is very intent on it happening, and he has a really good way of manifesting a lot of things. But I just can't figure out what the purpose of a feature film is when you have had a television show.
Well, if it happens, BCC Film Club will be there.
Oh, okay.
They'll be there at the premiere. I'm going to ask one more question, then we're going to open it up to the audience. So, our microphone person, get ready. So, in a September New York Times travel story, Omari Hardwick said, quote, "He never travels without a hat," unquote. And in the story, Omari talks about the items he takes on vacations. You probably want to know where I'm going with this, right? His Nas sunglasses, his motorcycle bag that's made from boxing glove material, his Freebird boots, his crucifix and rosary that he purchased in Israel. And finally, Omari talks about a book he's reading as research for season 4 called The Eagles Have Flown. Courtney, are there clues in that book for next season that our club should know about?
No.
It's just a book he's reading? Okay. Had to ask.
No, no. I mean, there were thematic issues, certainly, that he found as a part of the journey that he was going, but no.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, because I went online to Amazon. It's about a kidnapping Winston Churchill during World War II.
I'm sorry. That's what sorry.
Okay,
no.
not there.
No, there's nothing there. I apologize.
So Laura, I think, has the first question. Laura, you have the first question. Where's our microphone? Here we go. Laura, make sure you say your name.
Hi, my name is Laura. I'm a BCC student, and my question is, when you pitched the idea for Power, did you go to any other network?
So again, I'm just going to repeat for our audience. Laura wants to know, when you pitched Power, did you go to another network before Starz?
Oh, yes, absolutely. We went to Showtime first, and we went to FX.
Why did you pick Power? Or why did Power pick you?
Why did Power pick me?
You mean Starz?
You mean
Why the
Starz?
Starz, yeah.
Oh, well, Showtime, okay, how do I say this? The pitch, when you do a pitch, you do pitch live. Some people write their pitch out and then they just read it, and I don't do that. I speak extemporaneously. And so it came out different ways at different times. At Showtime, I was pitching the show really about a liar, and they felt like they had something that spoke to that. When I went to FX, I was really pitching a drug show, and they felt like they had something like that. Well, Starz had something in development that was about the birth of hip-hop, that time period. But it wasn't, and drug culture at that time period, but it wasn't as universal as this is, because this show was really about the one that got away, and can you change does your past dictate your future? It was less of a historical document, and our show, that show was a historical document. This show is more present day, so I think they were more interested in that, but I don't know for sure. You'd have to ask them.
Thank you.
Sure.
Is there another question online coming in? We'll come back to that. Oh, no, Laura, you have one? Okay, so as soon as we get that question in place. Bobby Rivers interviewed you, love Bobby, recently, and he said that, quote, one of the things he sees in your shows is that that's benefited from your talents is there's strong, complicated woman characters we see in Power. Has that been one of your goals in your work?
No. I think it's interesting. People ask me a lot about female characters, and I find that even the question, to some extent, ghettoizes women. We are characters. I mean, it's like, think of it this way. You write such strong left-handed characters. You know what I mean? It's like, why? What's different about it? And the thing that's different about it, honestly, is that people have a tendency to write weak women characters. And what I want to know is why those people don't get asked that question. Why are the women characters in your stuff so weak? You know what I mean? As opposed to me I'm writing about all different kinds of people, and I'm trying to write all strong, complicated characters. One of the most complicated characters in our show is a straight white male, Tommy. He is complicated, he is interesting, he is worth watching. Our women are complicated and strong because everyone should be. That's actually the bar. The bar should be every character should be good. If you're saying that you can write a show where only the men are interesting and the women are just props, well, that's sad. And that's weak and it's lazy. So I'm actually more interested. It's not that I set out to create great women characters. I set out to create great characters. I didn't set out to create a show that had really great and interesting people of color. I set out to create a show that was good. And so I think for me, it's always like, I feel like sometimes those questions are always about they're always about this idea of like, well, here's a safe haven for female characters. And it's like, well, that should be everywhere. And it's a shame that it's not. It's a shame that we have to have that conversation in 2016, that it's like, oh, it's a woman character who actually I can understand, who isn't just a prop,
Angelique, you have a question. Angelique has a question. So introduce yourself.
My name is Hello, my name is Angelique Alvarez, and I'm a student here at BCC Film course. I guess I wanted to ask you, did it take you a long time, like the come up when you're writing throughout the years? Does it take a long time before somebody actually realizes that your writing is great and they want to use you, or do you have to continue throughout?
Still trying to prove yourself. I think that's what Angelique wants
Yeah.
to know. I mean,
Well, I was doing this for 10 years before I got my own show.
Okay.
But what I would say, the advice I give everyone all the time is
Right.
this. Get a job getting coffee. Get a job getting coffee. Get a job in the office, on the production office on a show. Get a job on a show, and then write while you're there.
Okay.
I promote from within. A lot of people are like that, but you don't get your writing read, generally speaking. If you don't have an agent and you're coming from the outside, you're coming from like a place where you're not connected. Like I know a lot of people whose dads are TV writers or whose moms are in the industry. Well, that's one way to get in, is that
Right.
you're already in, you're born in. If you're not born in, and I wasn't born in, I had done the assistant route in magazine business, and so I got, I wrote that article, and that's how I got in. But that's magic, that's God opening that door, because I wanted to go a totally different direction. I wanted to be the first black female editor-in-chief of Vogue, and every time I interviewed to get toward that, God was like, nope. And so this was the path I was supposed to go on. But the answer to your question is, I would say go get a job getting coffee. The best job in TV is being my assistant. You hear everything. I don't hide anything. You're on all the notes calls. You hear what the network says. You hear what all the marketing people say. You get all the access to everything, and that's while you're able to write. I walk around at my office and I make sure people have final draft open. If you are my writer's PA, which means you get coffee and you get lunch, and all that other time you're not in the writer's room listening or writing your own script, you're out, because you should be passionate about writing. That's why I want you there.
Right.
So it's not that it doesn't take a long time. You should get into the business at the lowest possible level and learn your way up. If you are a person who's like, how do I get my own show on the air? The way you get your own show on the air is working your way up. That's how
Right.
you do it.
Right. Well, I think you're awesome.
Thank you.
I like the
I
show.
think you're awesome.
Thank you.
And all of
So-
our students get a free version of Final Draft while they're here.
Oh, that's amazing. That's so great.
And we thank Final
I pay
Draft
for
that.
mine.
I know. Free license. Courtney, do showrunners have any responsibility to culture? Do you feel that being a creative person requires that you give back or tell a particular story or not do something else? Why or why not? What films will you not produce? What shows will you not get
That
involved
is such a great question. That I love that question, man. I feel like I have a responsibility to make more of myself. So what I mean by that is I have a responsibility to, you know how Ghost is obsessed in the show? Do you guys watch the show? You watch the show, right? So Ghost is obsessed with making more of himself. So his whole thing with Dre is like he's gonna turn Dre into himself, and he has not really figured out that Dre isn't him. Like he's just projecting onto Dre this idea. Well, the same thing would be true, hopefully, and not in the negative sense of me, which is that I want to make more showrunners who are like me. Does that mean you're a woman? Does that mean you're gay? I'm not gay, but if you are LGBT, are you of color? Is English not your first language? Is there something about you that makes you not exactly mainstream? Because those are the showrunners that we need right now. It doesn't mean that there aren't showrunners that are in the mainstream that aren't doing great work. You know, there are people doing amazing work, and I'm not taking anything away from them. But those doors are not always open. The people who helped me get where I am, by the way, don't look like me. It was not the people who were of color were reaching down all the time and saying, come up. Everybody looked different. But I would say that the important thing is to mentor, hire people who need that boost. And it's not about the storytelling. It's about teaching them how to tell a story. You know, that's the thing that's in short supply. Anybody can make a beautiful documentary about a noble black person who does all the right things. Fantastic, great, wonderful. But the other issue is who gets to make that? You know, you need more executives who can greenlight more stuff. You need more showrunners who can run more stuff. I hope this is making sense, but look, for me, it's like, that's the thing that I'm so passionate about. That's why I'm here. I literally changed a plane ticket to be here today because it was so important to me to do this with you. You guys are the future. You running your shows, directing your material, being in front of the camera. That's what's important because that's what actually changes things from where they are right now.
We have another question from the audience. Okay, right back there. Microphone, please.
How you doing? My name is
Nice and
Steph.
loud.
Hello.
Is that on?
It's working.
How you doing? My name is Stephen Brown. I'm a student here as well.
Hi, Stefan.
The question I want to ask you is, what advice do you have for any aspiring actors, actresses that's interested in getting into the business? And also, I want to know, how did you go about the process of choosing each actor in the
Sure.
the
Okay.
show?
That's a great question. So the question was, do I have advice for aspiring actors and actresses? I don't really, because I don't know much about it. I'll be honest, I don't know much about getting into acting. What I do know is that talent and skill are different things. So work on your skills. You know, one thing that when we were looking at people to play Ghost, one of the requirements for Ghost is that he speaks Spanish. Omari doesn't speak Spanish. We were teaching him and all the things, but that's one of the things that I needed. If the person had shown up and actually was fluent in Spanish, that would have been cool, right? So it's like, do you have a whole bunch of other skills? Joe Shakura, who plays Tommy, actually grew up as a tagger, like he was a graffiti artist. So we used that. I don't know if you guys saw that on the show. That's really Joe. Like he really does make art. Having a full life and a full set of skills that are really interesting or creative, that lifts you above everyone else. So work on that stuff. If you get to go to acting school, work on your combat, learn how to shoot a gun, learn how to ride a horse. Like, learn this stuff that's gonna make you more versatile. They always tell you to lie and say you know how to do it in the audition and then you'll figure it out when you get the part. That is terrible advice. I fired people for that. So I'm just saying, learn more stuff. That would be my first thing. My second thing would be because you're young now, start to cultivate Instagram followers. That's something that casting agencies and people care about now that didn't happen 10 years ago. 10 years ago, nobody cared about that. Now that's important. And it turns into real dollars. So that's one thing. I would start to cultivate a personality and to have a clean social media, like don't put stupid stuff on your social media. I will tell that to everyone. Like, don't take pictures of yourself getting high. Don't take pictures of yourself drunk. Don't take pictures of yourself doing something stupid. Don't take pictures of yourself that are sexual. Don't do any of those things. If you want to be an on-camera person, don't do that. If you have this stuff on your Instagram right now, take it off. Because if I want you to be the face of my show, Omari doesn't have any stupid stuff out there. Because you're going to get interviewed. And what the interviewer is going to say, I did my research. Turns out I have this picture of you getting high with 2 other underage kids when you were at 20 at BCC. Why were you getting high with 2 17-year-olds? Well, they were freshmen. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's too late. What? I would say take everything of you using any substance off your Instagram. If I can find it, it might dissuade me from hiring you because you have to do publicity. Being an actor is not just what happens on stage, it's the whole thing, just like I write in sweatpants and leggings and a hoodie, but you see I'm not wearing that right now and I'm in front of you. That's one piece of advice I would definitely give you. And as for the casting process on the show, the first year, it was, we had a casting director named Victoria Chambers. Vicky has done a ton of, shows and movies with people of color. She knew everybody in the business, and we saw everybody. I saw everybody for Ghost. I saw everybody for Tasha, like every name you can think of. I mean, not Denzel, but I'm saying everybody who wanted to do TV, I saw all of them. And it was pretty amazing because Omari specifically had all the things that you needed. You needed intelligence, you needed him to be a little bit scary, you needed him to be sexy, you needed him to be sensitive and vulnerable. So, we got lucky.
Does he have to put that tattoo on for every show and then take it off?
Actually, it's the opposite. Omari is almost fully covered in real life. So we actually cover some of his tattoos.
Wow.
Every single time you see him without his shirt on, it's 2 extra hours. And we have to airbrush him down. So we're not putting on a tattoo. We're actually taking them off. And then I have to go behind it digitally and do it.
We have another question online, and nice and loud. Where's the question from?
We have a question from Clara from Brooklyn. How many women do you have in your writer's room? And were there women in your room on previous shows?
Oh, that's a great question. Awesome question. Are there women in my writer's room now, and were there women on on previous shows? I'm a little older than y'all. Like I said, I'm going to be 40 in a minute and a half. But what I would say is this. Coming up in the business, a lot of times I would be the only woman. A lot of times they would hire a whole writing staff and then go, man, we need a woman. A lot of times I would be, you guys watch 30 Rock? I would be twofer. I was a woman and a person of color, so people would hire me because I was both. And so that was very frustrating. It's hard. I will say this, overall, it is harder to be a woman in pretty much every way, except when you're dealing, usually, not all the time, but except when you're dealing with the police. It is harder to be a woman. In this particular case, in my show, my writer's room is about half and half now. We're about half and half. We're leaning a little bit toward women when we start to talk about the support staff. We start to be more women. But we were half and half, and we were more male in the beginning of the series, and less now.
How many are there in the room?
Okay. Fingers. Our staff writer this year is Monica Mitchell. So it's Monica, Jeff, Sophia, Vladimir, Warren, Raphael, Damien, Heather, Gary, 9, 10, me. I have a huge room that I fought for. That's a huge room. And by the way, when I say that, all of those people are money. When you are running a television show, everything is about your budget. It comes down to your budget. That is money, and they're not an even amount of money. They all cost different amounts.
Actually, I have a money question for you. Film director Robert Rodriguez, Spy Kids, said, quote, low budgets force you to be more creative. Sometimes with too much money, time and equipment, you can overthink. My way, you can use your gut instinct, unquote. How does this apply to your writing and showrunner experiences? How does working within tight restrictions, time, money, talent, force you to be more creative?
Oh, that's a great question. We always write, in the writer's room, we actually will say, oh, we can't afford this, we can't afford that. We'll talk about it. That's the best way to produce. To actually produce is to talk about it while you're coming up with creative ideas. Sometimes we decide how we're going to spend our money. So, for example, the Museum of Natural History was not cheap. So yeah, that's where you're spending money. Brooklyn Bridge Park, those of you who are fans of the show, episode 302, Ghost is waiting for Tommy in Brooklyn Bridge Park. So you get that nice shot from behind Ghost, and there's the bridge, and then there's the reverse, and you see Tommy, and he's lining up the gun, and he can't quite pull the trigger because he loves Ghost. That's $60,000. Every time we go there, that's $60,000. So if you want to spend $60,000 of your location budget on that, then okay, but that means that other things have to be cheaper in an episode. Being on your sets is cheaper, writing toward that is cheaper, all those things, very important.
I have another question. Laura, online question?
Do you get, no, this is a
Okay.
personal question. Do you get people offering their places to you?
Well, people offer their places, but you still have to pay a location fee. So there's no such thing as a free place. And you still have to go out to that place, and you have to move the whole company to shoot, and that costs money. Anytime you're not on your sets, it costs money. So, and if someone offered their place to me, I mean, people offer within the context of locations in New York, everywhere, all the time, because people like to use their houses and get a location fee. But if someone were to say to me, yo, use my crib for Power, that's probably a no. Because they probably are a fan of the show and specifically want that, and then they're going to tell their friends, and they're going to tell their family, and then the day that we're shooting, 1,000 people will show up. We shot in the Bronx with 50, season 2 opener, 50 goes to Pink Sneakers apartment.
Right.
Okay, that was, oh God, that was up here. I can't remember exactly where we were. But the word got out that 50 was there. And the whole street, we couldn't get the vehicles. Because people just came, and they just showed up just to see him, and it was wonderful. I mean, great for him, but it's not great for us while shooting. So, yeah.
And, you know, and by the way, Laura has a restaurant in Brooklyn. I know that she runs with her husband. What type of restaurant is it, Laura?
Mexican.
Mexican. See, she wants you to shoot there.
Oh, sure.
right.
And then you would tell everyone.
Yes.
And so then we couldn't.
You know, I'm sorry, I just want to bring this up because I was reading recently when John Travolta was doing Saturday Night Fever. He was a big star from Welcome Back, Kotter. Mm-hmm. And they had 10,000 people show up when they knew he was going to be at 2001 Space Odyssey. And John Badham said, we got to shoot at 5 in the morning. Does this happen with 50 Cent? How do you not leak out that he's going to be on the set? He's such a big celebrity.
We are very careful about it. We're just careful about it. And by the way, as the show's gotten more popular, it doesn't matter. Joe Sikora has a lot of people. People want to see Tommy.
Yeah, Tommy's great.
So it doesn't. So it can be a lot of different people. I'd love to get questions from back there.
Yeah, we're going to take one. By the way, I went to see Tommy, the whole cast speak at the Apple Store down in
Sure.
Hills, and he was the big attraction.
Yeah, people really love Tommy.
Yeah, I took a selfie with him.
Yeah.
Okay, we had a question back there.
It's really like in the back. Yeah, please.
In the back.
Oh,
Oh, go ahead, Ashley. Go ahead,
ahead.
Ashley,
Hi,
and then we'll go to back. Nice and loud, Ashley.
hi, I'm Ashley Bartholomew. I am an aspiring screenwriter. My question right now, like one of my many questions I want to ask you, but it's about Power, the show. I'm one of many fans of the show who are rooting for James to get back with his wife, but we don't really know.
Why?
Because
No. It was for reals though. Like totally for reals. Has he treated her in a way where that's what she deserves? Does she deserve that man?
oh yeah, no.
No, like seriously, like for real. If a man treated you like that, if your friend or your sister said you should get back together with him, upside the head.
That's
I
a
hear
good
you,
point.
and people do feel that way, but I am just gonna say to you, does she not deserve better?
Can I switch my question then about screenwriting?
Well, sure.
I heard a quote that says, "If you don't write every day, then you're not a writer. You can't call yourself a writer." What is your writing before you had your own show? What was your writing thing like? Like when you got ideas, how often did you write?
Okay, first of all, you can call yourself a writer no matter what. You can call yourself whatever you want, whatever you want. Don't let anybody tell you that. However, I will say this. I don't like writing, I like having written. I like pressing send. The name of my new production company is End of Episode. You know why? That's the thing I like typing most. End of episode. Writing's hard. It's really hard. The thing is, I carry a little tiny notebook with me all the time. I always have something to write on because I get ideas. You guys are inspiring me right now. The shade of your lipstick is inspiring me. I am thinking about what that would look like on Naturi right now in a certain scene because that's how my brain works. So I want to write that down. I think that if you're a writer, at this age, you already know. Because you've already been doing it a while in all the different ways. You know, just like people who are artists, if you see their stuff when they're 5th grade, they're sketching. You know what I mean? It's either in you or it isn't. In terms of writing every day, you should. Yes. But in terms of like my life, I've always made up stories. Part of it is that I came from a pretty abusive home. I'll be straight up with you guys, I'm not gonna lie. I came from an abusive home. My dad was a little difficult to live with, and I escaped with this. So that's where that came from. I started writing, you know? So that's still with me. That's with me all the time. Some people grow up and want to pretend they want to be actors, right? That's how they play pretend. For me, it's to make up worlds. So if that's your juice, if that's what's in you, you should be writing every day. You should be coming up with stuff every day, but that doesn't mean you can't call yourself a writer. I have a couple friends who haven't sold anything yet as writers, and they're like, well, I guess I'm not a writer. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Being a writer I think saying I am a writer is actually an expression of my spirit. It's not an expression of my job. So I just really, you know what, haters gonna hate. You know what I mean? Leave the haters to the left.
Thank you.
Courtney, we have time for like 1 or 2 more questions. So, Iffy, please give your name, and then Stacy. Go ahead.
Okay. My name is Ife. I am actually inspired by you. I'm encouraged.
Where are you from?
I'm from Nigeria originally.
I thought so.
Yeah.
My ex-husband's people are from Ghana, and they were raised in Nigeria, so there's that like beautiful lilt to your voice. Anyway, go ahead.
So all my life has been about the media. It's been about television mostly. Back in Nigeria, I started from my I have a bachelor's in dramatic arts, so my passion is writing.
Sure.
And I heard you answering somebody say that, okay, go get the coffee and all of.
Yes.
The industry everywhere in the world is a closed one. Even getting the job of getting a coffee is so hard. I knew that from when I was back in Nigeria. And getting here, my being in BCC right now as a student is actually to find a way to get into the industry while I'm doing what I'm doing.
Sure.
I still write, I publish magazines, and I do all of that. But on getting here to the United States several years ago, a lot of people were like, oh, the blacks can get into the industry, blacks can go do nursing, go do something in medicine and all of that. I'm like, I don't want to be a nurse. I don't want to do all of that. Media is my life. My question is, how did you keep on? I know you said you broke even, or you had your big break at 36. But there's a lot of story before then.
No, I didn't get my break. I'm sorry, my big break wasn't at 36. My big break was actually getting to work at Mademoiselle at 23.
Okay.
Because I got into media at that age, and then I wrote this story for GQ at 24. And I had my first cover line on a magazine at 24. So that really was my big break, because that's how I got here. Right. I actually don't have good advice because, again, I had a different goal. My goal was to be the first black female editor-in-chief of Vogue. I didn't make that goal. Failure. You see what I'm saying? So I actually don't know how to get that job at Getting Coffee, because the job I got getting coffee was in magazines. I was Ugly Betty, okay? So I was the person of color in that world. So I don't have the answer for you. What I would say is don't give up, and that the idea that you can't do something because you're black, when we reinforce that to ourselves, that is repugnant. Right. When other people of color tell you can't do it because you're a person of color, that is repugnant, and you should walk away from them and say, have a nice day, even if they're related to you. Just say, pass the salt, and walk away.
Thank you.
I really want to get to your question.
We have one more question from Stacy Jackson.
She needs a microphone.
Oh, Atalia, you have one? You know what? I'm going to do 2. Come on.
Yeah, I actually would. Can we do like 3?
We can do 3. Is
Okay.
that okay? Executive producer? Okay, go ahead. First,
our
we're going
EP?
to go with
Is
this
that
order.
Laura?
Italia first, then Stacy
okay to
first,
do
then
more?
Italia. Go ahead, Stacy.
Okay.
My name is Stacy Jackson, and I'm also a
the film and the media and digital
I
film.
love your hair, Stacey.
Thank you so
I'm
much.
sweating it. Yeah.
Thank you. My birthday is coming up, so I had to get some new flavor.
I understand.
I was just gonna tell you, you remind me of myself because I'm so like used to being in front of the camera, but it's not that I don't like it. I just want to be more in control. So I want to start writing more, but the more I start writing scripts, I just find myself not really being able to get my thoughts together. But when I just free write, I can just lay it out on a piece of paper. So basically, I've been going to a couple of the films
events, yeah.
the films that they shoot on campus, and I see some of the people and the actors and the people behind the scene. They don't really seem energetic and fun. So I just wanted to know, like, how are the production team with the actors, and how does everybody, like, just work together?
Are
is
you
it
worried
fun?
about having fun at work?
No.
Do you know
I'm
why
just
it's
worried
called
about
work?
making my actors so comfortable and like everybody on set just like, like just want to know how everybody works together.
Well, here's the thing. I don't permit assholes. Sorry, am I not
It's
allowed to
okay.
curse?
You're right.
But
We're on the web.
There's a book called The No Assholes Rule, and there's a book called Difficult Conversations. If you want to be a producer or a manager of people, you should read both of those books. I'm the boss. I try not to be a jerk, and when I'm a jerk, I apologize.
Okay.
So that's the first thing. The second thing is, though, for real, work ain't fun,
Yeah.
and people need to be focused and get the work done. So that's also important. But people in power are pretty overall, when it's not really cold, are pretty happy because the show is doing well, and that's not something I have control over. That's God's business. I put my best foot out in the world, and then whatever happens, happens. But what I would tell you is, it's hard work, and there are hard days, and that's true of any job.
Okay, so just kind of pretty much how everybody's mood is, you guys just go along with it depending on how hard the work is or what script should.
I mean, I just think, listen, it's work. I mean, I can't say it enough. That's why the word's work. Like, the word is work. If you get to do what you love to do and create and get paid for it, listen, let me tell you something, girl. I make up fake people, and they pay me real money.
Exactly.
I won every single day that I get to do this job. I get to come here and talk to you guys about it. I mean, for real, like, this is amazing.
It is.
My life is dope because I get to make stuff up and get paid real money. That's what I wish for you all. Make stuff up, pretend to be somebody else, get paid for it, right? Because that's the whole idea. So there is no. I mean, for me, worrying about whether or not you're happy or all those, that's not what it's for. You guys know the fancy word for getting paid is compensation. They compensate you for your time and your effort. So, like, it's not supposed to be fun. If you're looking to have fun, you should do something else.
No, not necessarily fun, the energy, just like like everybody's thoughts. Do you guys come together and
Can't
work
control
together?
that. You might be an
Okay.
empath, and you personally might be someone who soaks in too much energy from other people. You may need to work on that. Get your Teflon going.
Okay.
We have another question. Italia,
Yes.
nice and loud. You can stand
Hi,
up.
I'm Itala. I'm actually really curious. When you guys were in the writing room and y'all came up with the character for Jukebox, was Anika Noni Rose somebody y'all already like visioned
She
for
and I
it?
created that character together.
Okay.
And she's based a
I can
little bit
see
on
it.
50's mom.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know how much you guys know about 50, but we were talking about who would Kanan run to? You know, who would he go to in his time of need? So we talked about what that would be like and that familial relationship. But Anika and I really talked about, I love to talk to an actor and say, call them up and say, what have you never gotten to do before? So
yeah.
Victor Garber, who plays Simon Stern, when I called Victor, because he and I had known each other from 2 shows before, when I called Victor, I said, what have you never done before? And he's like, I never get to be gay on screen. I was like, bet. We will do that. He's like, I never actually get to be mean. I'm like, he's like, I get to be funny mean, but not real mean. I was like, yes, I got that for you, boy. So with Anika's, she's Laurel. She's Princess Tiana, right? So she's like, her real self is way more, we're both black girls from Connecticut, so like, whatever. But she's very grounded and powerful. She wanted to put that forward, and I was like, okay, I got that for you too. So that's where that came from.
Okay, we have one more question. We have Marcus. Take the mic, Marcus. Nice and loud.
Hello, my name is Marcus. I've been writing for over a decade and a half, but mostly music. And my question to you is, do you see like some similarities in you as a writer and 50 and do you see some similarities as a 50 Cent as a writer and you as a writer, and what advice would you give him if he would like to transition from writing music to films, I guess?
Well, 50's already started to write screenplays a little bit. Here's the thing about rap. Rap music and country music, they're both story. That's really what it is, it's story. We make rap is like hard, right? We give those people who rap, we give them a lot of credibility for being a lot of times really masculine. But if you think about that, rappers are just poets, they're just bards, they're just the same thing as the strolling troubadour back in the day. It's the same thing. It's an observation of life put to a beat. So if you're already observing life, whether it's your life or someone else's life, you're already doing the thing. That's writing. Writing is, I look at this person and I turn that into words. So you're already doing it. It's a question of beginning, middle, and end, right? It's a question of beginning and middle. And 50 already had that. When I met him, he already knew how to create characters. 50 Cent is a character. I don't actually hang out with 50 Cent. I hang out with Curtis Jackson. 50 Cent is a totally different person who I've never met. Because that's a person he created. That's an idea he created. When you create a persona, that's what you're doing. You're creating an idea of a human being. So he was already good at making characters and really thinking beginning, middle, and end. You already have that. I mean, I don't know what kind of music you make, but creating songs, writing songs is about that. And it is about structure. This is what you already have on people. When you were talking about getting your thoughts together, I was saying you free write until you have an outline. Then you write your outline, then you write your script. Don't try to write a script out of your free writing. You can't do that. You can't skip that step. When you are doing, verse, bridge, chorus, you're already working with structure. You have what you need to transition. It's just a question of like stepping back and not thinking, oh, I can't do it. You can. You all can. There is no question about that. Don't let anybody tell you something different.
We have one question in the back. Yes, sir. Nice and loud.
I can't see your face. Can you?
No.
I've been raising
There
my
you
hand
go.
for a
I
minute.
got you. Yes.
Hi, my name
What's
is
your name?
Eliane Dominguez.
Eliane.
Ellie. And I just want to say one thing first, is that I just love the idea that you used new faces. Because I watch a lot of movies and shows. I never seen the characters that's empowering other shows. So that's good.
Ed Sullivan. That's what I was talking about.
Ed Sullivan, right?
Ed Sullivan.
Ed Sullivan.
And also, when you say that everyone wants to see themselves on TV, do you mean that you want people to relate to your show? If so, do you speak by experience, even though the characters are like fake, made up? Do you kind of speak from experience in a way? And if so, like any particular scene?
Okay, so I'll explain. I'll answer that. It's a great question, fantastic question, and it's a lot of answers. I'll try to answer it quickly, but here it goes. I think people like to see themselves in two different ways. So when I see black people on television, to some extent Latinos now too, I get excited. Why? Because it's like me. The second thing is when I see someone who is a single mom, who's new at being a single mom, like I am, that feels good. When I see someone who has a dead father, like I do, it feels good to watch someone else go through that experience. When I see someone else who feels lonely, afraid, has a difficult decision to make, has to maintain a certain level of decorum when other things are going on inside, I feel good because it's like me. Some of those things are universal, some of them are not, right? The universal thing is we all have a one who got away. There's always someone who you loved who you didn't keep, who you didn't get to keep. Everybody can relate to that to some extent. That's part of what works with power, right? Ghost lost Angela, and then he got the opportunity to get her back, and he didn't care about the rest of his life. He wanted to get her back, right? That was a terrible idea, man. But he did it anyway, because that's him. That's Ghost. He does it anyway. Sometimes I do things anyway. Sometimes we all do things anyway. That's what's universal. People like seeing themselves on screen. Personal experience, yes. A lot of experiences that you see on that show are things that I've gone through. I do not sell drugs. I have never sold drugs. I'm not from Queens. I have, there's a lot of things I haven't done. I've never killed anybody. But I've talked to people who have killed people, and I've talked to people who are from Queens, and I've talked to people who have sold drugs, and I've talked to people, and I was a journalist first. Listen, this is the most important tool in writing. All of you who are writers, go to Starbucks in the next 2 days and listen to people talk. Don't write just from your own head. All your characters will sound the same. They'll all sound like you. Go listen. Sit in an open space here. Listen to how different people talk. I've gotten questions from all of you, and you all talk differently. Everyone should speak differently. That's the specifics. But in terms of my experience, I was in love with someone, my husband, who it didn't work out with. It didn't work out, and there were moments where it was like, oh no, this isn't going to work out. Okay. Then I take that and I put that in the show. You know? I'm a mom. I have to tell my daughter 2 days ago, I had to say, Mommy is leaving again to go to New York for 2 weeks. And she says, Mommy, don't go. Okay. I can take that feeling that I have when she says that, and I can put that into the show. It may not look the same way. It may be Kanan having that feeling about Tariq going back somewhere. It might be someone else having a different feeling, but I can put that in the show. So yeah, I definitely, there's so much of me in the show, and this is the last thing I'll say. I'm sorry, this is such a long answer, but I think it is important for those of you who are writers. Every character you write has to have something in common with you. And specifically, I'm going to talk to the men for a second. The reason I get this question about female characters is that men have a hard time imagining what it's like to be women. We don't have as hard a time because the world kind of works in your direction. So we kind of have to watch movies where the main character is a male all the time, and it is easier for us. For you, it is harder to write women a lot of the time. And what I will tell you is when you create a female character, this is your shortcut. Give her something that's like you, and then you will be able to write her. Whether that means that she has a little sister or a little brother that she can't spend time with, or she has a mother that she disappoints, or she has whatever it is, or she has too many jobs, or whatever it is, make her relatable to you. At 3 in the morning when you have a deadline, you have to go in here. There's no one to call at 3 in the morning to say, how would this character act? It's just you. So you have to build everyone you write from the basic ingredients of who you are. And I say that to everybody, but specifically to men, if you're writing women characters, make them relatable by making them relatable to you first. And then you're cold.
Well, this is like part one of a two-part show, so we're going to have to invite Courtney back. But our time has come to an end, and it's been a fascinating and insightful discussion, and we thank you, Courtney, for joining us. And I'd also like to thank the New York State Governor's Office of Motion Picture and Television Development, the New York Production Alliance, and our student TV crew from the Media and Digital Film Club here at Bronx Community College. See you next time. That's great. Thank you. That's great. You were great. I will send you a DVD.
Oh, God. I hate looking at myself, but thank you.
No, keep it on file.
Thank you.